Okay, scholar practitioner leaders, data scientists, SPLs, welcome back to our fall 2025 statistics for data science, MSDS for section MSDS 531, A01 for the first bi term. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at our week 4 material, okay? Now, this material, guys, is all articulated in the week's folder. So just be mindful, everything is already out there. But I do want to go over it with you, a part of my lecture for our week 4. So now, my deliverable that I'm expecting, guys, for this week 4, now that we have put to bed the previous week 3. That is long gone. Now we got this week 4, and we got some good assignments that you're going to appreciate. I'm not going to tell you guys on what the appreciation is, but I'm sure you probably have already looked. However, but this is going to be a good week for you guys to do a deep dive, especially when you're talking about regression, making sure that you know how to differentiate all the various types of regression that you must learn this week. Okay. Alrighty. So, with that being said, let's go over my deliverables that I'm expecting for our week 4. Okay. Now, we know that my deliverables are derived from the overview. Okay. So, with that being said, this week 4 is all about having a common goal in statistics to answer the question, is the variable x associated with the variable y? And if so, what is the relationship that can we use it to predict y? Okay. And that's pretty much what it's all about. That is statistics in a nutshell. I'm going to say that again because that is the whole premise of what statistics is all about. The common goal, guys, in statistics is to answer the question, is the variable x associated with the variable y? And if so, what is the relationship? And can we use it to predict y? So, prediction of an outcome, which is the target variable, based on the values of the other predicted variables. And that's it in a nutshell, guys. So just remember that. So in data science, the most important use of regression is to predict some dependent outcome variable in order to determine the nature of the relationship between the predictors and the outcome. So, with that being said, the relationship between the response and a predictive variable isn't necessarily linear. So, for example, the response to the dose of a drug is often nonlinear. Doubling the dosage generally doesn't lead to a double response. Aha. So just like if you take a whole lot of, say, for example, aspirins, well, you don't need to take so many, but if you do, you're going to have a different outcome than what you're expecting because you doubling it, and that's why they always say that often when you take any type of drug, it is often linear, okay, as opposed to being, is often non-linear, as opposed to being just linear, right? So they don't have the same relationship by doubling the dosage. So this is why it's always non-linear, okay? So just be mindful of that, guys. Also, by the week's end, for this module, which is our week 4 module, there are 6 things that I'm also expecting to go with those deliverable items that I just spoke of in my overview. Okay. So the 6 items are, you're going to have to be able to find the slope and intercept of linear regression. Number 2, calculate performance metrics for multiple linear regression. Convert the factor variables into numeric variables. Interpret linear regression, which is number 4. Number 5, diagnose linear regression. And then the last item that I'm expecting, far as you guys making sure that you understand this module, week 4's module, is describe polynomial regression. Okay. And that is really indicative of this whole week's work. You guys are going to see when I do a little bit more deep diving into our material. But just remember those 6 items, guys. All right, along with this oral lecture. Now, the things that I'm repeating over and over, that's a sign, that's a flag. Hey, this is really important. So make sure you guys do not overlook what I'm saying. So take notes on this lecture as well, because you don't want to miss anything. Okay. Now, as far as the book, we're going to be looking at, since this is week 4, we're going to be looking at chapter 4, okay, for our practical statistics for data science. And this time in chapter 4, we're going to be looking at regression and prediction. Now, there's 7 items that I want you to look at when you're looking at the regression and prediction for chapter 4 in our electronic book. The first one is simple linear regression. The second one is multiple linear regression. The third item is prediction using regression. The fourth item is factor variable in regression. The fifth item is interpreting the regression equation. The sixth item is going to be regression diagnostics. And last but not least, polynomial and spline regression, okay? Please make sure that you're able to differentiate those, okay? Because if not, you're going to be blown out the water. You're going to be completely lost. Those 7 items are truly huge for this week. So you're going to have to really sit down in a nice quiet place for an hour or two to make sure that you understand how to differentiate those different types or different forms of regression, okay? And then also in our other embedded book in this chapter, which is the Modern and Statistics with an R link, the link is already in the chapter. We're going to click on it and go to section 8. I need for you guys to really get a good feel on regression models, okay? So take great notes on that. It is imperative that you understand regression models to coincide with the 7 types of regression tools that we're going to be using in this week, okay? So make sure you understand how to differentiate those 7 types of regression items that I just outlined. And then also in the Modern Statistics with the R link embedded book inside the chapter, make sure you understand regression models. So regression models versus the data scientist types of regression that we use when we're looking to analyze a statistical area that we're looking at in regard to data science, and or an area that we may be extrapolating, okay? But we need to know which type of regression are we looking at, okay? So this is the reason why differentiation is going to be really imperative on you guys knowing how to apply each of those types of regression, okay? All righty, and then as always, we have supplemental book material, guys. If you want to do a deep dive in that, I'm always advocating that. If you want to get some more baseline on the various types of regression. So there are some items there. If you want to get some material out, feel free on your own discretion, on your own time. Um, get as much knowledge as you need so you can feel comfortable. Because I always say, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. Okay, so that's going to be imperative. And then also this lecture right here, guys, I'm letting you know what area of content that you really need to hone in on. And this is the why I do it, because I want you to always be well prepared when any type of test, any type of mentioning of an area. Oh, that must be, say, for example, multilinear regression. Oh, that's actually factor variables in regression. Okay. So as long as you know how to differentiate those, you are going to be successful. And that's what I want to ensure, that each of my SPLs, data scientists, are rock stars when it comes to interpreting various types of regression, okay, and or prediction, okay. So that's an imperative for this week 4, guys, and that's what that overview, my deliverables, was really talking about. Basically, depending on, are they dependent on each other, or is it better off being non-dependent? So that's what we're looking at to sum it all up for this week. And that's what we're focusing on, making sure, based on those deliverables that I gave you earlier, that I just spoke on in regard to data science, how the most important use of regression is to predict some dependent outcome variable in order to understand the nature of the relationship between the predictors and the outcomes. So, that being said, the relationship between the response and a predictive variable isn't always necessarily linear. Okay. So I gave you an example about drugs, so you guys know that we know that drugs are often nonlinear. Okay, just because you double, triple the use of it doesn't mean you're going to get that double response, as I previously articulated. Okay, so this week is all about really focusing in on the details, taking your time, guys, to really be successful. And that's what I really want to make sure that you guys do. Just, understand everything, not just go through the motions and think you're going to know it. Well, memorize it. You don't want to memorize it. I want you to actually know it. Okay. So, and that's what it's all about. Find a quiet place. I don't want to memorize. I want to know it. So keep beating that dead horse when you're working on this assignment, guys, so you can actually know it, not memorization. Because when you memorize stuff, you actually forget it. But if you know it, you never forget it. That's the key. So always be mindful of that. And that was my whole thing of when I was in grad school, guys. I didn't want to memorize nothing. I want to know it. Because if you know it, you won't never forget it, as opposed to memorizing something. Because that's just a band-aid. It's never for the long term. Okay. I'm gonna say that again. Memorizing is just a band-aid. It's never for the long term. Whereas when you know something, that's definitive. You won't forget it because you actually know how in your brain when that pops up, because I actually know the material. Okay. So that's what it's about, guys. Alrighty. So with that being said, I'm pretty much wrapping up this 3 or 4 lecture, because I'm going to go into our assignments that's going to be due for this week. And as I previously stated, many of you probably already know what those assignments are, but I want to surprise you anyway. So I'm going to do that on lecture 4 because I want you guys to have fun, because I know last week, this past week 3, you guys probably spent some considerable amount of hours based on your grading of your work, or not grading per se, but looking at it and going over some of the areas in your assignments from week 3. You guys spent some time really honing in on your statistical analysis and extrapolation tools, making sure that you understand how to apply that. And that's what I saw in the assignments. And that's why I've been very much giving you guys this high praise, because the proof is always in the pudding. What I mean by that, I can actually see where you guys are at by looking at your work when you turn it in. Okay. Because you know what they say, when you put in a hot mess, you're going to get a hot mess out. But if you put in the work and actually do step by step what is required, you're going to be getting what you expect from that particular assignment. Okay. So that's what it's all about, guys. So when I do come back, after closing this week 3 or 4 lecture, I'm going to come back with lecture 4. And on that lecture, we're going to go over the assignments and maybe a couple of housekeeping items as well, if I can think of anything. I think I pretty much got everything out on the table except for the assignments now. Okay. All right. So, alrighty, guys, sit back, come back and see me in about 20 seconds, and we will go ahead and commence with our final lecture for this week 4. That will be lecture 4. All right, guys, I will see you within the next 3 to 4 seconds for our final lecture, and we will be going over our assignments. See you in a bit. Bye-bye.